Open your mouth right now. Run your tongue along your teeth. That smooth, clean feeling, that minty freshness that tells your brain everything is fine in there. That is a very recent invention, like within the last century, recent. For the vast majority of human existence, your mouth would have felt completely different. Your teeth would have been covered in a layer of biofilm, stained dark from decades of plant tannins, worn flat from the grit and sand that got into every single meal you ate. Your breath wouldn't have been fresh by any standard you recognize. And yet, here is the strange and counterintuitive truth that archaeology has been revealing over the past 2 decades. Despite all of this, your teeth would have been healthier than they are right now. Much healthier, the skeletons prove it. I know that sounds like it can't be right. Let me show you why it is. The conventional wisdom about ancient teeth is simple and intuitive. It must have been a disaster zone. No toothbrushes, no toothpaste, no floss, no mouthwash, no dentists, rotten teeth, abscesses, constant pain, everyone dying of gum disease by 30. That's what we assume, because that's what feels logical. If you stop brushing your teeth for a week, your mouth feels terrible. So if you never brushed at all, it must have been an absolute nightmare. But the archaeological evidence tells a different story entirely. A landmark 2014 study led by Dr. Alan Cooper at the Australian Centre for Ancient DNA at the University of Adelaide analyzed the dental calculus. That's the hardened, mineralized plaque that builds up on teeth over a lifetime. From over 1,000 prehistoric skeletons spanning 50,000 years of human history. Dental calculus is remarkable because it preserves an extraordinary amount of biological information. It traps fragments of food, bacteria, plant fibers, and even proteins from the immune system, all frozen in a mineral matrix that survives for tens of thousands of years. By analyzing this material, scientists can reconstruct exactly what ancient humans were eating and what their oral health was like with extraordinary precision. The results of Cooper's study were startling. The rate of dental cavities in pre-agricultural humans was between 1 and 3% across the entire sample. In modern industrial populations, the cavity rate is over 90%. Let me say that again, so you understand the scale of the difference. Hunter-gatherers had cavity rates of 1 to 3%. You have a cavity rate of over 90%. You didn't read that wrong. You have worse teeth than someone who never held a toothbrush, and it wasn't because they had some secret prehistoric toothpaste recipe that we have lost. It was because they didn't need one. Let's start with what a prehistoric mouth actually looked like. If you could travel back 30,000 years and look inside someone's mouth, the first thing you would notice is wear. Not decay, not rot, but wear. Their teeth would be flattened. The biting surfaces worn completely smooth from decades of chewing, tough fibrous, gritty food, meat that had to be torn apart with the teeth, roots that had to be ground into a digestible paste, seeds that had to be crushed between molars. A 2017 study by Dr. Luca Forenza at Monash University in Australia used micro-CT scanning to analyze the microscopic wear patterns on Neanderthal teeth and found something fascinating. Their teeth functioned more like a third hand than a chewing apparatus. They used their teeth as tools constantly to hold objects while their hands worked, to process animal hides, to soften plant fibers for weaving. The wear patterns on Neanderthal front teeth are so distinctive that archaeologists can identify them even without associated tools. And yet, despite this constant, heavy, decades-long use of teeth as multi-purpose tools, they rarely decayed. The skeletons show it. The calculus confirms it. The wear is there. The cavities aren't. Why? The answer comes down to 3 interconnected factors: diet, oral microbiome, and the complete absence of one catastrophic ingredient that now saturates every meal you eat. Let's talk about diet first, because it is by far the most important factor, and it overrides everything else. Prehistoric humans ate food that was mechanically tough, but chemically neutral. They ate wild game, fish, roots, tubers, nuts, seeds, berries, and the occasional piece of wild fruit when it was in season. None of these foods contain high concentrations of the types of sugars that cause tooth decay. The sugar that was present in their diet came from wild honey or ripe fruit, and both were available only seasonally. A hunter-gatherer in prehistoric Europe might have consumed the sugar equivalent of a single apple per day during the late summer months. and close to zero during the winter. Compare that to the modern diet, where sugar is added to everything from bread to salad, dressing to pasta sauce, and the average person in a developed country consumes over 60 kilograms of added sugar per year. The mechanism of tooth decay isn't complicated. Bacteria in your mouth, primarily Streptococcus mutans, feed on fermentable carbohydrates. When they digest these carbohydrates, they produce acid as a metabolic byproduct. That acid demineralizes the hydroxyapatite crystals that make up your tooth enamel. Over time, the enamel breaks down and the soft dentin underneath becomes exposed. Once dentin is exposed, decay accelerates because dentin is less mineralized and more susceptible to acid attack. The end result is a cavity. No sugar, no acid, no cavities. It is that direct. Prehistoric humans didn't have better toothpaste. They had almost no sugar. And the difference in cavity rates between a low-sugar diet and a high-sugar diet is so dramatic that it swamps every other factor. But diet alone doesn't tell the whole story. Prehistoric humans did engage in what we would now recognize as oral hygiene. Even if it looked nothing like our modern routines of plastic brushes and fluoridated paste, the evidence for this is preserved directly in the dental calculus itself. A 2019 study from the University of Tübingen, led by Dr. Amanda Henry, analyzed microscopic particles trapped in the dental calculus of 300 prehistoric skeletons from Europe and the Middle East. The resolution of the analysis was high enough to identify individual plant cells and fiber types, and what the team found was remarkable. Embedded in the calculus were plant fibers, fragments of wood, charcoal dust, and even tiny pieces of bird feathers. These weren't food residues. The plant cells weren't from edible species. The charcoal wasn't from cooking fires. These were direct evidence of oral hygiene activities. Prehistoric humans were using grass stems and small twigs as toothpicks, working them between their teeth to dislodge food particles. They were rubbing their teeth with charcoal, which provides a mild abrasive cleaning effect and has natural antibacterial properties. Activated charcoal is still used in premium natural toothpastes today, and they were using the hollow quills of bird feathers as dental probes, inserting them between teeth to clean out debris. This practice wasn't unique to one region or time period. Dr. Henry's team found the same patterns in skeletons from different continents and different millennia, suggesting that active, intentional oral hygiene isn't a modern invention. It is a human universal. The tools differ. The impulse is the same. Let's look at the most widespread and scientifically validated natural tooth cleaning tool ever developed by any human culture, the miswak. The miswak is a twig from the Salvador persica tree, commonly known as the toothbrush tree, and it has been used for oral hygiene across Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia for thousands of years. It is still in widespread use today, with an estimated 1 billion people using it regularly. The World Health Organization formally recommended its use in 1986 as an effective alternative to modern toothbrushes, particularly in regions where commercial dental products are unavailable or unaffordable. What makes the miswak so effective isn't just its mechanical cleaning action. When you chew the end of a miswak stick, the fibers separate and fray, forming a natural brush with bristles that can reach between teeth. But the real magic is in the chemistry. Salvador persica contains a complex mixture of bioactive compounds, natural antimicrobials that suppress the growth of Streptococcus mutans and other cavity-causing bacteria, silica that provides a gentle abrasive cleaning action, tannins that bind to plaque proteins and prevent their adhesion to enamel, and fluoride in small but measurable amounts. A 2012 comparative study from King Saud University in Saudi Arabia directly compared the effectiveness of miswak use against modern toothbrushing. With fluoride toothpaste, the study involved nearly 500 participants and used standardized plaque and gingival indices. The result: miswak users had significantly lower levels of Streptococcus mutans in their saliva than toothbrush users. The natural twig was actually more effective at suppressing cavity-causing bacteria than the engineered plastic brush with the chemically formulated paste. This isn't an ancient remedy that sort of works. It is a technology that outperforms its modern equivalent. And the miswak is just one example of convergent cultural evolution in oral hygiene. The neem tree in India has been used for millennia as a chewing stick. Neem contains a compound called azadirachtin that is both antibacterial and has used for antibacterial all European. They independently discovered that certain plant materials could be used to clean teeth and maintain oral health. This isn't coincidence, it is convergent evolution of cultural knowledge. Built on thousands of years of trial, observation, and transmission, the identical solution emerged independently. Dozens of times because it works. But here is the most important part of the story, and it completely changes how we think about ancient and modern oral health. The real reason prehistoric humans had good teeth isn't primarily about what they did to clean them, it is about what they didn't eat. The agricultural revolution, which began around 12,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent and spread across the globe over the following millennia, was the single worst event in the history of human dental health. When humans started farming, they began eating large quantities of domesticated grains: wheat, barley, rice, maize, millet, sorghum. These grains are rich in starches, complex carbohydrates, that begin breaking down into simple sugars the moment they mix with saliva. The enzyme amylase in human saliva starts hydrolyzing starch into maltose the instant you take a bite. By the time you swallow, a significant fraction of that starch has already been converted to sugar, and that sugar is immediately available for Streptococcus mutans to ferment into cavity-causing acid. The archaeological record of this transition is brutal and unambiguous. A 2001 study published in Nature by Dr. Brian Hare and his colleagues examined the dental health of prehistoric populations in the Levant across the transition from hunting and gathering to early agriculture. The study analyzed hundreds of skeletons from Natufian and early Neolithic sites spanning the critical transition period. The result: cavity rates increased by a factor of 10 within 2,000 years of the adoption of grain farming. Not gradually over millennia, within a few generations. Hunter-gatherer skeletons from the same region, from layers just a few thousand years older, had almost no cavities. Farmers from the same geographic area had teeth rotting out of their heads. A 2013 study led by Dr. Eske Willerslev at the University of Copenhagen provided the microbial evidence for this transition. The team extracted and sequenced ancient DNA from the dental calculus of skeletons spanning the hunter-gatherer to farmer transition. They found that the oral microbiome underwent a dramatic and permanent shift at exactly the same time that agriculture was adopted. Before agriculture, the human mouth was dominated by bacteria species adapted to a low-sugar environment. After agriculture, sugar fermenting, acid-producing bacteria exploded in abundance. The change happened within a few hundred years. An evolutionary blink of an eye, and it was permanent. Once sugar-loving bacteria established themselves in the human oral ecosystem, they never left. Every human population on Earth, even those that continued hunting and gathering, eventually acquired these bacteria through contact and exchange with agricultural neighbors. The pre-agricultural human mouth was a stable, balanced ecosystem. The bacteria in it had co-evolved with humans and their diet for millions of years. When that diet changed abruptly in evolutionary terms, the bacterial community changed with it in a cascade that continues to this day. Your mouth right now is still inhabited by the bacterial descendants of that agricultural transition 12,000 years ago. But it gets worse, because the agricultural revolution was only the first act. The second act was the Industrial Revolution, which brought refined sugar to everyone. For most of human history, even after agriculture, sugar was rare and expensive. Cane sugar was a luxury available only to the wealthy. The average English person in the 17th century consumed less than a kilogram of sugar per year. By the 21st century, that number had risen to over 40 kilograms per year. The combination of agricultural starches and industrial refined sugar created the perfect conditions for a dental health catastrophe, and that is exactly what we have. Let's look at the modern evidence. A 2019 study from the University of Zurich, led by Dr. Thomas Bruckner, compared the dental health of 3 living populations: the Hadza of Tanzania, who still live as traditional hunter-gatherers; the Yanomami of Venezuela, who practice a mix of foraging and small-scale horticulture; and the general population of Switzerland as a representative industrial population. The results demand your full attention. The Hadza had a cavity rate of approximately 1.2%. The Yanomami had a rate below 1%. The Swiss population had a cavity rate of 93%. These aren't ancient remains. These are living people. The Hadza and Yanomami aren't fossils. They are people alive today, eating the same diet our ancestors ate, and their teeth are almost completely free of decay. Here is the most important finding from this study. When Hadza individuals move to agricultural settlements or urban areas and adopt a modern diet, their cavity rate skyrockets within a single generation. The children of Hadza parents who grow up in town eating rice, bread, and sugar develop cavities at the same rate as any other modern child. The protection isn't in their genetics. It isn't in some racial or ethnic dental advantage. It is entirely in what they eat. Remove the protective diet, and their teeth become just as vulnerable as anyone else's. This tells us something profound about the nature of oral health. The ancient human mouth wasn't a disgusting, rotting mess that we have heroically improved with modern dentistry. It was a well-maintained ecosystem that we have catastrophically disrupted with modern agriculture and industrial food processing. Our ancestors didn't have a secret dental technology that we have lost. They had a diet that didn't destroy their teeth. The toothpicks and twigs and miswax and charcoal were just the icing on a cake that had almost no sugar in it. Now let's talk about what a prehistoric oral hygiene routine actually looked like in practice, because it is nothing like what you imagine. If you were a hunter-gatherer living 30,000 years ago, you wouldn't have had a morning routine. You wouldn't have had a specific set of tasks labeled dental care. Instead, you would have had a set of behaviors woven into the fabric of daily life that incidentally kept your teeth healthy. You would have chewed tough, fibrous foods that naturally scraped plaque off your teeth with every bite. You would have eaten almost no sugar, so the bacteria in your mouth wouldn't have produced enough acid to damage your enamel. You would have periodically picked food out from between your teeth using a twig or a grass stem. Not because you thought about dental hygiene, but because the feeling of something stuck between your teeth is annoying and you wanted it gone. You might have rubbed charcoal on your teeth. Not because you read an article about activated charcoal toothpaste, but because you noticed that people who did that had whiter teeth and less mouth pain. You wouldn't have thought of yourself as performing oral hygiene. You would have just been living your life in a way that didn't destroy your teeth. And that is the crucial insight. The prehistoric model of oral health wasn't interventionist. It was environmental. Instead of treating the disease after it appeared, they prevented it by never creating the conditions for it to develop in the first place. Now, let's bring this to a conclusion that might change how you think about your own daily habits. In the 20th century, we invented a cure for a problem that we ourselves had created. We created a diet that destroyed teeth, then invented toothpaste, and floss, and mouthwash, and biannual dental checkups to manage the resulting damage. We treat it as a heroic achievement, and in some ways it is. Without it, modern teeth would be even worse than they are. But despite billion-dollar dental industries in every developed country, despite toothbrushes, with pressure, sensors, and electric flossers and prescription strength, fluoride, toothpaste, and sealants, and fillings and crowns and root canals, we still have cavity rates above 90%. We haven't solved the problem. We have built an entire medical industry around managing the symptoms of a disease that we refuse to address at its source. Meanwhile, isolated groups, like the Hadza and the Yanomami, who use nothing but twigs and water, and a diet that hasn't changed in 10,000 years, have almost no cavities. Their dental health is objectively better than yours, and it isn't because they are doing something you can't do. It is because they aren't doing something you refuse to stop doing. They aren't eating sugar and refined carbohydrates at every meal. They aren't consuming 60 kilograms of added sugar per year. You brush your teeth twice a day, you floss when you remember. You visit the dentist and your teeth are still worse than a hunter-gatherer's who never held a toothbrush. The problem isn't your hygiene. The problem isn't your hygiene. The problem is your environment. You are fighting a war against an ecosystem that you feed 3 times a day. The next time you spend 3 minutes broadcasting your teeth to tennis, and your teeth and more buying into the narrative that you are performing an essential ritual that keeps civilization from collapsing into dental chaos. Ask yourself this: is your mouth really healthier than someone who never brushes? The skeletons already answered that question. The twig on the ground? It was always enough. The bread was the problem.